A writer seeks peace in a mountain cabin, but her landlord's creepy visits and snide remarks, pretty thing. Smile more. Turn it sour. When he keeps her $800 deposit, claiming damage with no proof, she fights back in court. Armed with photos and grit, she faces a tense showdown. Will justice prevail, or will his lies hold? A tale of courage, confrontation, and a win that echoes, yet leaves you wondering, how many stay silent, and what's next in those hills? The air around the rental cabin on the outskirts of Asheville, North Carolina, hung thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, under a gray spring sky, the kind that draped the Blue Ridge Mountains in a shroud of mist, its edges blurring into the horizon, like a watercolor painting left unfinished by an absent artist. The cabin perched on a wooded slope off a winding gravel road, its weathered logs stained dark by years of mountain weather, their knots and cracks tracing a history of storms and solitude. Its tin roof glinting dully beneath the overcast light, speckled with rust and pine needles that skittered across it in the faint breeze like restless spirits. The ground beneath crunched with fallen twigs and last autumn's leaves, a carpet of decay softening the silence, broken only by the distant caw of a crow perched in the skeletal branches of a bare oak, its cry echoing through the stillness like a warning unheeded. Laurel Bennett, 32, stood on the creaky porch, her dark hair tied back in a loose ponytail that brushed her shoulders, strands escaping to frame her pale, determined face. Her travel bag slung over one shoulder, its canvas strap digging into her navy blazer as she shifted her weight on the uneven boards, her sneakers scuffing the weathered wood. Her green eyes scanned the retreat she had booked for a month, a quiet escape from her cramped Asheville apartment to finish a freelance writing project on Appalachian folklore. A deadline looming like a shadow over her dwindling savings, her last chance to claw back from a dry spell of gigs that had left her bank account echoing with emptiness. The air carried a chill despite the season, a dampness that seeped into her bones through her jeans and sneakers. But the solitude felt right until the landlord arrived, shattering the stillness she had craved with his presence. Carl Hensley, 58, pulled up in a rattling pickup truck, its faded red paint chipped and streaked with mud that clung to the wheel wells like a second skin. Gravel crunching under the tires with a sound like bones snapping as he parked beside her Jeep. Its forest green finish, dulled by road dust, accumulated over the winding drive from town. He stepped out his wiry frame, hunched in a flannel shirt, patched at the elbows with mismatched thread, the fabric faded from years of wear, his gray beard patchy and unkempt, curling over a sunburned neck that bore the marks of too many summers under the unforgiving sun, his brown eyes glinting with something Laurel couldn't quite place. A flicker of curiosity, perhaps, or something sharper, hungrier, that prickled her skin like a sudden drop in temperature, sending a shiver up her spine. "Nice girl like you all alone out here. Hope you don't get lonely up in these woods," he said, his voice a gravelly drawl that scraped against the quiet. His grin too wide, showing yellowed teeth stained by years of coffee and chew, his gaze lingering too long on her face. Her bag, her legs in a way that made her stomach tighten into a knot of unease. Laurel forced a polite smile, her lips stiff, her voice clipped but steady, despite the thud in her throat. "Just here to work, thanks for the key, I'll manage fine." But she adjusted her bag, stepping toward the door with its chipped green paint, the screen rattling faintly as she pushed it open, its hinges groaning in protest. But Carl lingered, his boots scuffing the porch boards as he handed over the key, his thick fingers brushing hers too long, a deliberate graze that sent another shiver up her arm, her skin prickling under his touch. "Pretty thing, don't go inviting trouble here," he added, his tone hovering between jest and warning, his eyes darting to her jeans, her blazer, then back to her face, a smirk tugging his lips as he leaned a fraction closer, his breath carrying a whiff of tobacco and stale beer that curled her nose. Laurel's jaw clenched, a faint heat rising in her chest, her unease sharpening into something harder, a quiet defiance flickering beneath her calm, but she nodded, her voice steady despite the thud in her chest. "Got it. See you around, I guess." "Buh." She ushered him off with a curt wave, stepping inside and shutting the door with a firm thud that reverberated through the cabin, the bolt sliding home, with a metallic click that echoed in the dim space, a sound that felt like a small victory against his looming shadow. The cabin creaked under her steps, pine walls scarred with knots that stared like unblinking eyes, their dark whorls a silent witness to her arrival. A stone fireplace, cold and ash-strewn, its hearth blackened by forgotten fires. A sagging couch, draped with a quilt that smelled faintly of mildew and mothballs. Its faded patchwork, a relic of someone's past comfort, now left to fade. It was clean enough, though, the wooden floors swept bare of dust. The kitchen counter wiped down, a single bulb flickering overhead, casting long shadows across the room. But the stillness felt fragile, a veneer over something restless that pulsed beneath the surface. She had wired the $800 security deposit days prior. A chunk of her savings drained from her account, with a pang that lingered, trusting the listing's promise of peace. A promise. Carl's presence already chipped at with every word, every glance, his comments lingering like a stain she couldn't scrub away from the pine-scented air. Over the next week, his visits began unannounced, too frequent, too close for comfort, a rhythm that disrupted her fragile peace. He'd knock, mid-morning, claiming a leak under the sink that wasn't there, his toolbox clanking, as he poked around the cramped kitchen, his boots leaving muddy prints. She would mop up later with a scowl, or linger by the porch in the afternoon, eyeing her through the window as she typed at the table, her laptop humming softly against the silence, its screen a lifeline to her work. "You ought to smile more, brighten this place up, make it worth the rent," he said one day, leaning against the doorframe, his flannel shirt unbuttoned too far, revealing a tuft of gray chest hair. She didn't want to see his breath, sour with tobacco, as he hovered just inside her space, his shadow stretching across the floor like a claim she didn't invite. Laurel's unease grew, a knot tightening in her gut. With each visit, her fingers lingering on the bolt. After locking the door, her quiet retreat souring into a cage she couldn't quite escape. Her project stalling under the weight of his shadow, her notes piling up untouched as his words echoed in her mind. By the third week, the comments turned bitter, Carl's tone shifting from needling to outright hostile, his visits a drumbeat of intrusion she couldn't predict or outrun. He'd mutter about uppity tenants when she asked him to knock before entering, his voice low, but cutting like a blade through the quiet as he lingered outside. Kicking gravel with his boots, his brown eyes narrowing through the window, while she worked her fingers, pausing over the keys as his glare burned into her back. A weight she felt in her shoulders. "Folks like you think you own everything, complaining about nothing." He'd grumble, his words a jab. She felt in her spine, his truck rumbling away, only to return days later, its engine a growl she learned to dread like a storm rolling in over the ridges. One night, the tension snapped. He banged on the door at 9 p.m., his fist rattling the frame so hard the windows shivered in their panes, his voice booming through the wood like thunder. "You're too loud. Keep it down, princess, or it'll make you." Laurel startled from her writing her laptop screen, casting a pale glow across the table. Her folklore notes scattered around her jumped up her heart, thudding as she peered through the crack, her voice firm despite the tremor in her chest. "It's just my laptop. Please leave. This is ridiculous. It's late." He smirked, his patchy beard twitching in the porch light, his shadow looming large against the screen, like a specter she couldn't shake. "Fancy girls always think they run the show. Watch yourself, Missy. Don't push me." Bum. His tone carried an edge, a threat veiled in his drawl. Laurel's pulse hammered a drumbeat in her ears, but she shut the door, sliding the bolt with a click that echoed in the quiet, her breath shallow as she leaned against it, listening to his boots scuff away his truck roaring off into the night, its taillights fading into the mist like eyes closing on a nightmare. She moved out 2 days later, packing her Jeep under a drizzling sky. The cabin's creaks a relief to leave behind as rain pattered on the tin roof, softening the pine needles into a slick mulch underfoot that clung to her sneakers. She loaded her bag, her laptop, a stack of notebooks, her folklore project half done, stalled by Carl's shadow, her hands trembling faintly as she locked the door. Her key left in the mailbox, per his terse email instructions. Its rusted hinges squeaking as she dropped it in. Back in her Asheville apartment, a cozy one-bedroom with bookshelves lining the walls, groaning under the weight of history and myth, a window framing downtown's brick facades and the misty hills beyond. She unpacked the familiar hum of city traffic, a balm. After the cabins, oppressive quiet. Its stillness now a memory she could shake off like damp clothes. She emailed Carl that night, her fingers tapping the keys with a mix of exhaustion and resolve, her coffee cooling beside her. Moved out early due to your behavior, repeated unannounced visits, inappropriate comments. Please return my $800 deposit per our agreement. His reply pinged back within hours, curt and cold, a slap of text that fueled her fury. Damage check. Keeping it cabin's a mess, you left it trashed, scuffs and trash everywhere. No photos, no list of damages, just refusal, stark and unyielding, her green eyes narrowing. As she read it again, her jaw clenching tight. Laurel fumed. $800 wasn't pocket change, not with freelance gigs patchy, and her rent due in a week. A deadline that gnawed at her savings like a persistent ache, threatening to unravel her fragile stability. She called her friend Mia Carter the next morning, meeting over coffee at Bean Street Cafe downtown, its air rich with espresso and the damp scent of rain-soaked coats. The clatter of cups, a steady rhythm beneath their talk. The windows fogged with the breath of morning regulars. Mia, a paralegal, with a quick laugh and a sharper mind, sipped her latte, her hazel eyes glinting as she listened, her short brown hair tucked behind her ears, her pen tapping her napkin as she sketched a quick note. Her voice, a lifeline. He's full of it. Landlords can't just keep deposits without proof, not under North Carolina law, general statutes. Chapter 42. Section 4251 says he's got to justify withholding at itemized damages with evidence, or he's toast. She leaned forward, her tone firm. Sue him in small claims file for the 800 ad court costs. Hell, fight dirty. Probably lie through his teeth. But you've got a shot if you've got proof. Hope you're ready for a scrap, Laurel. He won't roll over easy. He's too stubborn for that. Laurel nodded, her resolve hardening like steel, cooling after a forge. She had spent the night researching tenant laws online, poring over forums and statutes, her laptop screen. A glow of hope in the dark, her coffee growing cold as she scrolled. She found a small claims form on the county website, filled it out at her kitchen table. Bennett versus Hensley. $800 plus $96 filing fee, citing harassment and wrongful withholding. Her signature, a vow on the dotted line. Her pen trembling faintly, with a mix of anger and determination, as she sealed the envelope, her breath steadying with each step toward the mailbox. The Buncombe County Courthouse buzzed on a damp spring morning, its marble halls echoing with footsteps, the air cool and heavy with the scent of wet stone and polished wood. A faint hum of voices spilling from open doors, like whispers escaping a confessional, carried on the breath of those seeking justice or dodging it. The small claims courtroom sat tucked on the second floor, a modest space with oak benches worn smooth by years of disputes, evictions over unpaid rent debts from handshake deals gone sour, squabbles over fences and fender benders that turned neighbors into foes. Its walls lined with faded portraits of stern judges, their eyes peering down from dusty frames, like silent overseers of the day's reckonings, their gazes a weight felt but not spoken. The gallery murmured softly, tenants in faded jeans and work boots, their hands rough with labor, landlords in ill-fitting suits or wrinkled polos, their faces set with defiance or boredom. A few retirees sipping coffee from paper cups, their whispers a low current beneath the hum of a flickering fluorescent light overhead. Its buzz, a persistent drone that pulsed through the room like a heartbeat. At the front, behind a raised bench scarred with nicks and pen marks, sat Judge Karen Whitlock, 47, her blonde hair streaked with gray and pulled into a loose bun that softened her angular face, its strands catching the light like threads of silver. Her hazel eyes sharp with a quiet intensity that cut through the room's haze like a blade, through fog, slicing through pretense with ease. Her robe hung crisp over a frame, softened by years, but firm with an authority honed through a decade on the bench, her hands resting steady on the wood fingers tracing the grain, as she called the case. Her voice a measured drawl that carried a hint of steel. Bennett versus Hensley, security deposit $800 plus costs. Let's hear it, folks, and keep it tight. I've got a full docket today. Laurel sat at the plaintiff's table, her navy blazer, snug, over a white blouse, its collar crisp against her pale neck, her dark hair tied back in a ponytail that swayed as she arranged her notes. Photos printed on glossy paper, emails, and texts compiled in a neat binder. A rental agreement with her signature stark against Carl's scrawl, its ink faded but legible. She had prepared a loan. No lawyer. Her savings too thin for that luxury after the deposit loss. Her resolve a steel thread woven through weeks of frustration. Her green eyes steady with a mix of nerves and fire, her hands trembling faintly as she smoothed the binder's edges. Carl slouched across the aisle, his flannel swapped for a wrinkled button-up shirt that strained at his belly, its sleeves rolled unevenly, his gray beard patchy against a sunburned neck that flushed faintly under the lights. His smirk, faint but lingering like a habit. He couldn't shake his brown eyes glinting with a mix of defiance and disdain as he leaned back in his chair, his fingers drumming a lazy beat on the table. Karen leaned forward, her elbows resting on the bench, her hazel eyes shifting between them like a pendulum. Seeking balance, her pen tapping once against her notepad, a signal she was ready to peel back layers, her voice cutting through the gallery's hum. Plaintiff, you're upstate, your case clear and simple, no fluff, I want facts. Son. Laurel rose, her voice steady, carrying across the room with a quiet strength that belied the thud in her chest. Your Honor, I rented his cabin for a month starting March 1st, paid an $800 deposit up front, through a bank transfer, moved in with everything intact, clean floors, no trash, working appliances counters, wiped down, nothing out of place. First week, he'd show up unannounced, fixing a leak under the sink that wasn't there, poking around my kitchen saying stuff like, pretty thing, don't get lonely, smile more, brighten this place up. Made me uneasy, but I stayed polite, asked him to call first, kept it civil. Third week he got hostile, called me uppity. When I set boundaries, banged on my door at night, yelling I was loud when it was just my laptop running. Couldn't work. Couldn't sleep with him hovering like that. I left March 22nd, emailed for my $800 deposit. He said damage. No proof. No list, just refused. Said it was a mess. There was no damage. My photos show it clean when I left counters. Bare floors, swept, no trash anywhere. He's retaliating because I left early, not repairing anything. She slid her binder forward, photos of the cabin's interior. Pristine and orderly counters, bare of clutter floors, gleaming under the flash emails with Carl's. Curt replies, time-stamped, her hands steady, despite the thud in her chest, a rhythm she had learned to harness from years of deadlines, and grit her voice, a lifeline she clung to. Karen leaned forward, her hazel eyes sharp, her pen poised over her notepad, its nib glinting faintly. Comments documented anything in writing to back that up show. His tone prove what you felt? Laurel nodded, her voice firm, unwavering. Emails, texts, he didn't deny them, just deflected, or got snippy. Here's one from March 24th, 2 days after I left. Troublemaker tenants don't get refunds, sent at 8:47 p.m. Another March 10th. City girls think they're special, keep it down. I've got more, pretty thing, in a text March 5th. Smile more in an email March 12th, all here. She handed over prints, timestamps, clear in black ink, the paper rustling, as the clerk, a young woman in a beige sweater, passed them to Karen. The judge flipped through her pen, scratching a steady rhythm, her lips thinning slightly as she read, her gaze flicking up, her voice probing. Harassment, how'd it affect you? Staying there, what'd it do to your time? Laurel's voice softened, a crack of strain, beneath her calm, her green eyes glinting with memory. Felt watched, couldn't focus. Kept my blinds shut, slept with the door locked. Checked it twice. Every night left early 'cause it wasn't safe. Not for my head or my work, couldn't breathe with him around like that. Carl's lawyer, Ray Dillon. A wiry man in a cheap gray suit with thinning hair, combed flat, and a nasal voice crossed, leaning in with a smirk, his hands clasped behind him. "You provoked him, complaining all the time. Rude, pushing buttons, right? Got under his skin." Laurel met his eyes, unflinching, her voice cutting through his bait like a blade through paper. "No, asked for privacy, once kept it civil. Polite every time. Didn't raise my voice, he escalated. Got loud, got close. Not me." Ray pressed his tone, mocking, his smirk widening. "Damage hidden, maybe under rugs, behind stuff you didn't snap pics of everything, did you? Photos show otherwise clean, untouched, took 'em moving out every angle. Living room, kitchen, bedroom, all there," she said, her voice steady, her hands gesturing to the binder, her evidence a shield. Ray. "Upset, making it up, blowing it out of proportion 'cause you didn't like him. Facts aren't feelings here's. Proof, photos, texts, you can't argue with that," she countered. Her green eyes firm, her resolve a wall he couldn't breach. Karen scribbled her pen a soft scratch, her hazel eyes flicking to Ray, her voice dry. "Move on, facts, not guesses, next question." Carl took the stand, gruff and slouching, his wrinkled shirt creasing further, as he swore, his hand heavy on the Bible, its leather worn from years of oaths. "She trashed it, cans all over, dirt tracked in scuffs on my hardwood floors, counters sticky with who knows what left early, whining about me being mean 'cause she couldn't hack it up there, uppity city girl, thought she was better'n me, owes me for cleanup if anything." His voice carried a sneer, his sunburned neck flushing deeper as he leaned forward, his hands waving in a dismissive arc. The gallery shifted, Ed whispering to Clara, "Sounds like Carl, always griping about folks." Clara nodding with a faint frown, her coffee cup trembling slightly in her hand. Karen's voice cut dry and precise, her hazel eyes narrowing. "Proof, photos, receipts, something I can see, not just your say-so. Tenant law show damage, itemize it or it's just hot air blowing through this room." Carl fumbled his hands, dropping to his sides, his smirk faltering, his voice gruff. "Didn't take pics, saw it myself. My word's good, been renting 20 years, never a problem, till this one came along with her attitude, her fancy ways." Karen's pen paused, her lips thinning into a line, her tone sharp, her drawl tightening. "Words, not evidence. Law says you prove damage. Itemize it within 30 days. Not her disproving your story. What's sticky, spills, food. Be specific or it's nothing." Carl shrugged, his smirk fading fully, his hands clenching. "Just sticky, messy, you know. Tenant crap, didn't think I'd need pics for that." Karen's eyes narrowed further, her voice a quiet blade. "Vague's not proof. You ought to know better after 20 years next." Mia Carter testified, climbing the stand with her paralegal poise, her short brown hair tucked behind her ears, her hazel eyes steady as she swore, her voice clear. "I swear to tell the truth, so help me God." She sat, her hands steady, her tone firm. "Visited Laurel, March 21st cabin. Spotless. No trash. No marks. Floors swept, counters clean. Smelled like pine cleaner, not a speck out of place. Saw Carl's truck there 3 times that week, too much for maintenance. Texted her troublemaker, March 24th after she left, here the print." She slid a screenshot, Carl's number. "Troublemaker tenants don't get refunds." 8:47 p.m. Her hands steady as the clerk passed it to Karen. Ray crossed, his voice nasal, his smirk faint. "Bias your friend right, skewing it for her?" Mia. "Saw it myself. Truth is truth, friend. Or not. Didn't need to skew anything. It was clean." Ray. "Damage later. Maybe after you left." "Not that day, clean as a whistle when I saw it," she said, unwavering, her hazel eyes locking his. Karen scribbled her pen, a steady beat, her voice calm. Next. Carl's friend, Ray Tucker, a burly man in denim with a thick beard, testified, his voice rough. "Saw mess cans dirt day. After she split, went with Carl to check, smelled like trash too." Karen. "Exact day when?" March 23rd, I think," he stammered, his hands fidgeting, his beard twitching as he shifted. "Post-move out, convenient timing, saw her leave?" "No, just mess," he muttered, his eyes darting. "Convenient." Karen noted her pen scratching her hazel eyes glinting with skepticism, her voice dry. Day after doesn't prove her mess could be anyone. Days stretched testimony, piled like stones in a riverbed. Emails dissected line by line texts, read aloud. Their timestamps. A timeline of tension photos, scrutinized under the courtrooms, harsh lights. Their glossy surfaces reflecting the galleries' faces. Ed with his thermos, Clara with her notepad. Their murmurs, a steady hum of speculation swelling with each exchange. Ed betting Carl would squirm, his voice low. He's caught now. Clara nodding with a faint smile. She's got him pinned. Karen recessed, retreating to her chambers, a quiet nook, with a chipped desk cluttered with files, a window framing Asheville's misty hills, shrouded in drizzle. Its glass streaked with rain, her boots tapping the hardwood, as she paced her mind, sifting evidence like gravel through a sieve. Her coffee cooling untouched beside a stack of statutes. She returned after an hour, her robe rustling as she climbed the bench, her voice firm, cutting through the room's hum like a blade. Through silence, her hazel eyes sweeping the gallery, then settling on the tables. No proof of damage, plaintiffs. Photos show clean, no trash, no scuffs, counters, bare floors swept consistent with move-out day. March 22nd, her evidence holds solid. Defendant's claims unsubstantiated, no photos, no receipts, just vague talk of mess, sticky, nothing specific, no dates, no proof of when or what. Landlord's comments, texts, emails suggest retaliation, not repair pattern of hostility after boundaries. Set troublemaker uppity, show intent to punish, not fix. North Carolina General Statutes, Chapter 42. Section 4251, deposit returned unless proven. Withheld for cause. Itemized within 30 days with evidence. Defendant failed. No itemization. No documentation, just words. Plaintiff wins $800. Court costs $150, total $950. Claims of damage dismissed, no evidence holds up here. Carl's smirk vanished, his jaw tightening, his hands clenching into fists on the table, his sunburned neck flushing a deep red, his eyes darting to Ray Dillon, then away. Laurel exhaled relief, flooding her chest like a dam breaking, washing away weeks of strain tinged with a steel resolve that hardened her spine, her green eyes glinting with quiet triumph of victory she felt in her bones. The gallery murmured, Ed clapped softly, his thermos, thumping the bench, a muted cheer, Clara nodding with a faint smile. Her coffee cup steady now, her whisper to Ed. She did it. Carrying a note of awe. Karen's gavel fell a crisp thud, sealing the verdict wood meeting wood with a sound that echoed like a door, slamming shut on Carl's bluster, its finality a weight that settled over the room. She leaned forward, her voice low, her hazel eyes piercing. Mr. Hensley, you've got 30 days to pay file an appeal if you want, but evidence talks, and you didn't bring any next time. Come prepared or don't come at all. Ms. Bennett, you've got your justice use. It well, case closed. The room exhaled a mix of relief and unrest, a breath held too long, let loose whispers swelling as the gallery stirred their voices, a chorus of speculation and surprise. Outside, Asheville's hills glowed under a dusk streaked with purple and gold, the air cool with the promise of rain, a damp breeze rustling the live oaks lining Pack Square, their leaves whispering secrets as Laurel stepped from the courthouse, her blazer slung over her arm, her binder tucked under it, her sneakers scuffing the wet pavement. Carl paid days later, grumbling, as he handed over a check at the clerk's office, his voice a low mutter. Waste of time. His truck rumbling off in defeat down Biltmore Avenue, its taillights fading into the misty dusk. His muttered curses lost in the city's hum. Laurel banked it at her credit union on Patton Avenue. Her savings bolstered a lifeline against the rent looming next week, her resolve firm as the granite peaks framing her view from her apartment window, her green eyes glinting with a quiet strength as she watched the deposit clear on her phone. She'd write again, her folklore project reborn with a sharper edge. Tales of mountain resilience now laced with her own fight. Her laptop humming late into the night as she typed the clatter of keys. A rhythm of renewal, her notes spilling across the table like leaves caught in a wind. Friends toasted her at Bean Street, Mia with a latte raising her cup. To kicking ass, Ed with a black coffee grinning. Knew you had it. Clara with tea, her voice soft. Proud of you, their laughter. A balm that warmed the cafe's foggy windows. But as she sat alone later, her apartment quiet. Save for the drip of a faucet, bookshelves looming with volumes of history and myth. Her coffee cooling untouched beside her, she wondered, how many tenants stayed silent, swallowing losses to men like Carl, their voices stifled by fear or fatigue, their stories buried under the weight of resignation. How many Carls lurked in quiet towns, their words a creeping poison, their hands grasping at what wasn't theirs, their shadows stretching beyond the cabins and cottages they claimed. She'd share her story online, maybe a blog, a thread on a tenant forum, her words typed out in the quiet hours, her laptop screen aglow in the dark, hoping to spark others to fight, to claim what was theirs, her voice, a ripple she couldn't yet see the end of a thread she'd weave into something broader. The horizon stretched beyond her window, the Blue Ridge, a silhouette of secrets under a sky pricked with stars, their light faint against the cities, glow the misty hills whispering back. What ripple would her wind send? What voices would rise from the silence emboldened by her stand? What fights waited in the shadows of those ridges? Justice felt solid, a stone in her hand. A weight she had carried and wielded a victory carved from weeks of grit. But its echo remained a mystery, a thread trailing into the misty night winding through the hills, whispering questions she'd chase, as long as ink flowed and stories burned within her, her resolve a flame that wouldn't dim her eyes, fixed on a future she couldn't yet map. Thank you all for watching this video. Please comment and let me know what you think about this story. Please like and subscribe to watch more great content on my channel.